Action. My name is Sridhar Pai Tonse. Tonse is actually my hometown, which is a small fishing village near Udupi. For those that already know, I've been in the tech marketing slash um, content positioning GTM in the tech space globally for about 30 years now. Too long, if you ask me, but that's been my space. So I started from the very early days in Motorola. That was my first job outside of campus in Karnataka University, in Mysore University those days. University of Mysore, we used to call it. And from then, I was one of the first hires for Motorola India. And our product was the Codex range of stat muxes, TDM muxes, and networking. So, it's been a long way from that day, if you ask me, because believe it or not, we used to be doing demos for um, corporates where I was a part of the corporate team, right? Because the datacom equipment was so expensive that you had to be a corporate to buy it. We used to have something called a modem, and a modem would be something that would be sitting on both ends of the line. So there's a least data circuit, and there'd be a modem on each side. And when I say least data circuit, for example, if you think of a bank today, let's say a Canara Bank, which has a head office in Bangalore, let's say on JC Road, and then it has a branch office, a regional office or something in some other part of town, let's say MG Road. Now, the way files and data would go between this head office and the branch office, the regional office, would be through a dedicated line that would run from here to there. That line was called a leased data circuit and it would cost a few lakhs every year. And these were the good days for BSNL that would make tons of money from this. And you had to do booking. And, it actually a physical line, but just for those that do not know, a physical line, a real line would actually run from this office to that office. And needless to say, a computer would be connected on this end and the computer on the. If you needed more computers on each end, then you would have to have a mux. And then a mux would be sitting in front of the modem. So the line interface would terminate on the modem, and then the modem would plug into the mux, and the mux would have additional ports that would support additional terminal. So high level, that's how it would be. And the damn thing would cost $1.5 lakh for the most basic modem at that time. On this end, and another $1.5 lakh on that. For this fortune that you pay, the data speed would be an incredible 9.6 kbps. 9.6 kbps, not mbps, kbps. Today, on a basic ordinary phone like this, you can get, thanks to Wi-Fi, you can get 300 Mbps at home if you're on ACT, something like that. And if you're out there on 5G, you probably can still get maybe 12, 13 MB and so on. I mean, the 300 Mbps is the plan. I'm not saying get 300 Mbps at home or in the office, but you still manage to typically, well, you actually sometimes get 300 and very easily get a few hundred Mbps. And that was 9 kbps. If it was 9 Mbps, it would have been 100th. If it was 9 kbps, it means it was 1 millionth or 1 millionth of it. So we've come a long way, guys. In 30 years, we've moved from a dial-up modem or a basic 9.6K type of a modem at home for data to 300 Mbps at home with fiber. Incredible, frankly. So, but what kind of changes have happened on the other side, which is, let's say, for a user, for marketing, for a company, for enterprise? What kind of changes have happened from marketing perspective? So let's look at that. Like Bill Gates said, we have a tendency to overestimate what can be achieved in the short term or in 1 year and underestimate what can be achieved in 10 years. And I think that's so true. We always have, a tectonic shift that's happening slowly over a century is always missed. And it always appears as if it happened overnight. There's also what they mean when they say success doesn't happen overnight, because that grinding of the plates under the seabed, which is happening incessantly for 3, 4, 5 centuries, maybe a couple of millennia, is always unnoticed. Until one day, the tsunami happens and washes away 300 square kilometers of villages. So If you've read, anyone's read The Psychology of Money, I think one should read it. If you ask me, one should absolutely read it because Psychology of Money is definitely the one book that is a classic. I mean, that's not just a one-time read. Don't do an Audible. If you can still do an Audible, but you have to buy the hard copy and keep it at home because you don't know when you need it. At any time you pick it up and read it, it's like a Bible that will, kind of go back and remind you of how these massive changes are happening all the time, and yet we tend to overlook it. Okay. Now, something very similar has happened today, both in terms of uh, our careers as well as our possible businesses. And this entire discussion that I'm doing today is about how to convert one piece of content into 10. And why am I spending so many minutes talking about that possibility, but not yet reached there? I'm giving you the background to this. So let's look at that. Now, one of the big changes that has happened, if you look at our careers and our jobs and our prospects, is this. When we were kids, when we were just out of college and looking for jobs and so on, one of the main job providers was the government, and public sector jobs was considered the safest. But still, there were people like us who I think that was a very family driven thing. If you're in your family, you already had three or four or even one IAS officer or someone who went into civil services. There was a tendency for you also to start pursuing that line. Or maybe an uncle of yours will tell you, hey, you know what? Why are you doing all this stuff? Why don't you simply do civil services? Kind of a thing. Right? That would become the guiding post for you. But in many of our homes where we didn't have that background, typically the next best option would be to get into a public sector operation, public like BHEL, Bharat Heavy Electricals, or an IT, or one of these government units where you find a job, and typically it meant lifetime employment. Right? That was the major premise under which that job. Even today, I think to a lot of homes, a government job means lifetime employment, and that's what's needed. That's what they desire. But then, around the time that we were graduating, 90s, it became clear that private sector had plenty of opportunities, and it was a good option to take because typically it was a little more flashy, it was a little more high tech. I mean, nothing compared to today, but definitely more perks than the comparable ones at that time. Some travel domestic, maybe occasionally travel abroad. These kinds of things were thrown into the mix. Why? Because most of these private sector jobs that I'm talking were Indian subsidiaries of large global multinationals. For example, like that's what I meant by saying, as a part of what I did in Motorola India, I was one of the first batch of I think 30 hires or something to be now, and Motorola India was just being set up. So that was the background. Motorola, being this large player outside of India and globally, was looking to enter the Indian market, start selling its wares, and so on. And it also is tied to the industry that is about to grow. For example, the early 90s were the time of the opening up of the Indian economy. The liberalization era began in 1990. And post that was the opening of the doors for large global companies to come in and start investing in maybe manufacturing or distribution or joint ventures. For example, Maruti Udyog was one of the early joint venture companies for manufacturing cars with Suzuki, right? And then we had Motorola was one of the early ventures that came in for production of pagers and then mobile phones. And then service providers came in as a part of the telecom setup, and we had US West, BPL US West, if I remember correctly, AT&T. Um, I don't know about MCI, but a number of other companies came in, all service providers. So in other words, the Airtel of today going to Africa and setting up Airtel Africa, which is now already, I think, 15 years old. But something similar was happening 25 years ago when AT&T and T and MCI and other these large companies, the Dutch telco, what was the name of Uninor? I think Telenor was the Dutch company, and then you had a French operator, wasn't it? A Russian operator. We had a Russian operator starting with that. I forget the name now. So, so these large operators would come in and say, look, it's a billion people We need to, and then putting up greenfield 2G, 3G networks, we need to participate, get in through the telecom regulatory system, whatever it is. If you have a buy spectrum, let's do it and then participate. And then when you have to roll out the network, who will roll out the network? AT&T will not roll out the network. And AT&T will turn on the service. The rolling of the network will be through large tech companies like uh, Ericsson, Nortel, Lucent, Alcatel, all these guys. And all of those guys, many of them don't exist anymore, but those guys came. So every time they came in, there would be a need to set up their operation in India, which would be an Indian subsidiary, which became an opportunity for people like us to join the companies. And this became, higher pays, higher exposure, latest technology, better qualification, better qualified jobs, higher productivity, also very demanding, and meritocracy based. So if you don't deliver, you're out. So all of this started happening at that. Now, if you look at the career and career perspective, that has reached a point beyond that in the last 25 years, where we no longer just believe the private sector to be great places to work. We know that they are great places to work, but we also know now that they come with very, very unpredictable lifestyle, unpredictable and non-guaranteed career prospects. Why do I say that? Because even pre-AI, you know that in the last 4 or 5 years, before AI really happened, lots of jobs are being lost because the company is going through a hard time and they decide that, we'll have to right size, we'll have to downsize, we'll have to move this into another department, we'll have to sell this division off, we have to merge another company into us. All these various organizational engineering type activity, forcing careers to become more unpredictable even in the private sector. Now, I'm not saying that this is so bad that you would never join private sector. I'm not saying that at all. I'm the last guy to say that because I believe private sector good companies are absolutely invaluable and they create a solid foundation for you. They create the learning opportunities for you. And if you're delivering, nobody wants to get rid of you. And if you're delivering in that company cannot hold you, the industry will invite you and you'll have 3 or 4 job offers if you've done a great job. So we've seen how realistic it is, and it's very, very true. Having said that, you have to understand that even for me, someone like me, the prospect of actually expecting to deliver, for example, someone like me, not expecting to deliver, let me take that back. For someone like me, uh, and Motorola being my first job, believe it or not, I spent about nearly 2 years in the company, and one fine day I realized that this company uh, was not going to be around anymore. It was going to be shut down. This division, and we realized, in a matter of hours, that my country head would no longer be there, and our regional head was the Asia Pacific head also would be leaving, and then that the whole division would be shut down. Now, when you think that you're doing a great job, you think your company is doing a great job, and the last quarter numbers are very good, you're profitable, everything is looking great. You do not have the visibility and the justification to say, well, you know what? How come this job is going to go away? How come this company is going to disappear? So that kind of was a rude shock to someone who's just beginning a career. It was like, you know, if I can't even have visibility about this, about keeping this job, what value is it? You start thinking in those terms. Now, believe it or not, those days are back now here with the vengeance. Now, after AI has come in, we're able to see that teams of 10, 12, 20 people in the marketing department, for example, need not be there. Because almost all of that is going to be done by one single prompt or a set of prompts or a certain amount of what you want. That's only one little piece. But the fact is, I think the larger picture that I want to drive home here is the fact that whether you like it or not, it is a reality that AI, generative AI, and AI in some form will start impacting careers. It is not that AI is simply going to replace a bunch of people. In fact, one laptop with one screen can actually replace half a dozen people, machines, uh, all those costs. And the cost of this one machine may be nothing. I mean, the generator software, much of it may be free, and maybe a few licenses, maybe a couple of $100 a month, which is still very, very low. And you can easily offset a cost of half a dozen people. Now, this is the reality. Now, I do not want to get into the value judgment of is good, bad. That's not the point. because tech is tech, and you know, depending on which side of the table you are, you might actually vote for it, or you might actually embrace it, or detest it, right? So, but like it or hate it, you can't stop it. This is what happened early days when every mobile phone suddenly started having a camera, and every mobile user became all the studios in town just had to shut down. It had to shut. So these kinds of things have always happened. So I want to caution you that, just to make a long story short, I would like to say that the reality of corporates not being able to guarantee sustained careers is something you cannot shun. No matter how cordial your relationship is with your boss's role may become extinct. The division you are in may become extinct. And the company you're working for may not no longer be there. So the level of unpredictability is significant. I'm not saying every job will be lost, but I'm saying it is a reality you cannot just brush under the carpet. So what do you do? Because you finished your college, you're now started a job, and soon you'll be getting married, maybe have a family, or you have a partner. In many cases, both partners are working in an IT company or any other company, and the same impact can simultaneously happen to people. So it is a very real thing that the predictability of jobs and sustainability of careers is a challenge. So what do you do? That's really the question. Now, whatever knowledge base you have built and whatever skills you have developed, now is a great time than ever before to be able to sort them out, categorize them, create a flow between the usefulness of the skills, bundle them appropriately, package them suitably, target the specific type of people for whom it will be of use the internet, create digital assets, and monetize them using generative AI. I can guarantee you that depending on the space you're in and the tech you're in, these are extremely useful skills. And you'll be surprised how far it'll go. Are you in this with me? Okay, if you have a question, just write it down somewhere or hold the question, because I do not want to interrupt this conversation with questions. Let's do one thing. Let's move the questions to the end, and I'm pretty sure we'll have enough time for it. And if we don't have enough time for it, I will extend this call to make sure that questions are answered. But you understand the point, right? No matter what the background is, whether you are in IT, consulting, software, knowledge skills, knowledge base, or you're in non-knowledge industry of any kind, as long as you build a skill set, it will be of use to somebody. Again, you do not have to expect that you're going to be a PhD and you have to have a PhD to do this, or you have to put in 20 years, otherwise nobody will listen to you. That is not true. Because if someone is in the path as you, someone 2 years below you, or who's just behind you by 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, will benefit from those skills that you have today. In other words, if you think about yourself 2 years ago and the number of skills that you picked up in the last 2 years, you can just teach them. You can just monetize them. And again, here, monetization is not necessarily the only objective. The moment you start coming out of your comfort zone of 9 to 5 or 9 to 9, you come out and start interfacing with a larger digital/virtual community and putting your voice out there, putting your stuff out there, the following things will happen. Number one, first and foremost, you are becoming available to public. When you become available to public, two things happen. One, you become known, and your skill base becomes exposed, which is a good thing. Number two, you will start getting feedback. There could be people who are better than you, who put more years, who qualified more, will say, look, you know what? I've attended your program. I love the 2, 3 things you do, but this one, I think you can do it even better. Okay, so that is how you can actually fix that. Now, whenever you have feedback, make sure you take a note and then keep it with you, and then you can apply the corrections. And if you agree, if you do not agree, you can respectfully move away from it or stick to it. Number three is that, and I don't know how much you know of this, but one of the things I found out the hard way is no matter how much you read and learn, the highest level of retention of that knowledge happens not by learning, but by doing, and not even by doing, but by teaching. And there's actually a matrix I remember I made it in one of my earlier Instagram reels, but I'll tell you what it is. I remember these numbers. When you learn something by reading, the retention of that knowledge in your mind is 5%. Believe it or not, it's just 5%. But if you practice it and then uh, over time, your retention will be as high as 30 or 40%. But when you teach it to someone and show them how it is done, then your retention of it will go up to 80% and above. So all the books and stuff that we have read all these years, much of it, if it's not been practiced and taught to somebody else, it has already been washed away. I'm not saying the idea is not to build a mountain of everything that you have, but you would like to at least retain a little more than 30, little more than 5%. You don't want to just stick with 5%, right? You would like to have retain a little more. So that's what I'm saying. The next thing is the skills that you teach will not only benefit others, but it will benefit yourself. The highest beneficiary of whatever you teach is always the teacher. And this I found out very late in life, guys. Otherwise, I would have started this long ago. But even more important is the fact that if we don't even use what is given to us to offer ourselves as well as others, then I think we're doing disservice to ourselves. This is one piece. Another one that I wanted to share with you is, the movement of this knowledge economy in my mind, having been very closely associated with over these decades, is as follows. And of course, it's a personal opinion. I could be wrong or right or partially right. Doesn't matter, but I'm happy to share it. We are moving into a Gen AI, what we call agentic AI economy, which is so fast changing the landscape that I will not be surprised if almost all knowledge sessions move to digital. At least a majority of them, like already they have, even more of them. And I think the digital avatars will be so advanced that they'll automatically create based on whatever record or history of videos and content you put out there. In other words, if I've created 100 videos on, let's say, a topic like GTM, go to market, the next generation avatar video, which will automatically pick up from that and create even upgraded versions, get my approval, and then start creating either faceless videos or an avatar based video where I don't really need to be there and you don't really need to schedule it with me. It will automatically pick the students and say, look, based on what you're looking to do, these are the kind of inputs you'll need. Would you like to register and take this course? Or would you like to, there's 3, 4 modules. So this whole thing I'm beginning to feel is might actually move into a very highly automated, self-governing, copyright sensitive, patent sensitive type of stuff where even pricing might move becoming dynamic and the content and the modules may actually start flowing based on whatever is most suitable for the student. And this doesn't apply just to you, it applies to me. If I want to learn something new, I may just have to feed my request or my requirement or need, and the internet will find the suitable modules that I need to learn and will give it to me in nuggets that I can carry and use. I think largely this might happen. And then, of course, there'll be super gurus who will always be of value because of the human touch. And I think I'm not saying the human touch is going to go away. I think the human touch is really what will differentiate us from others. Because today, for example, you have hundreds, literally, I think in the last week, I've run into at least half a dozen faceless video tools like videox.ai. I mean, I can't remember now, but I have that complete list with me. There's at least 6 or 7 brand new, highly capable, very, very good. and it doesn't even cost a lot. It costs like $40, $50 for a year. And they I don't know how long they'll last, because every other day you have new features, new capabilities. But these softwares can actually create whatever you want from a single line prompt. So this is the premise of what we want. Now, this is really where it is. I would like to pause at this point, and if you have any questions, I would like to give you the opportunity to share them, because we can take a quick 2 or 3 minute break right now and see what, if there are any questions, if there are any comments, I'm happy to take them. Any comments, questions? So let's get into the next piece of what we really want to talk about. Okay? Number one is there's a specific set of techniques to use. If you want to move from a single line topic to a bunch of offshoots, okay, how do we do it? And why is it important? First of all, it's simply unimaginable today to talk about any business that does not have an online presence. You can't expect to have a business without an online presence. A few years ago, we meant by saying online presence, we meant a static website. And a few years after that, we meant maybe a mobile app, depending on type of use. And a few years later, which is now, we are talking about not just mobile first, we're now talking about AI first, which means the presence you need to have could be as simple as QR code, or it could be an app, or it could be just automatically available for the person who's looking. Now, therefore, one of the big understandings we're not even debating this, is how important it is to have your presence. And to have that presence happen, you need to have content. That's the only way you can become available. Because the internet is this large ocean spanning continents, where you're a seller of some, let's say, very specialized or natural ore or something like that in one corner of the world, very, very super niche play. And there's a bunch of buyers who are looking for something like this, but they're on the other continent. And how will you discover each other? If I need something and it's so important for me, I'm willing to pay whatever the seller is asking, but I don't know where the seller is. And the seller is sitting there saying, look, I have this perishable product that's the best in the world, but if I don't find a buyer in the next 48 hours, I'm dead. How will you find the buyer? The only way this can be done is by you becoming available on the internet in digital. And once you become available, some other person has to discover you, you have to discover the other person, which is really the job of Google and Meta and others who will make sure that the matching happens through paid marketing, performance marketing, through ads. Right? For that, you need to create the content that needs to be there. And the amount of content you need to create is somewhat diverse. It's kind of related, but it's somewhat diverse and has to be frequent. It's a bit different form. Can be visual, text, video, audio, long form text, short form text, long form video, short form video, all kinds. To make all of that become available is not a joke. This is the part that 8 people, 10 people, 6 people content teams were building till yesterday. You need to have someone who will understand the content that the product developer, builder, or the CEO, the owner, or the marketing head is saying. You need to create a good understanding of who the target market is or the buyer is. You need to understand the buyer's language. Translate the seller's language to the buyer's language. Use the lingo of the buyer, because he's the one that you need to impress. He's the one whom you need to express to. He's the one he or she is the one you need to, first of all, go in front of. So how will you catch that person's attention? So to be able to do that, you need to understand the language. Then you need to understand the mode. Is that person, for example, if you're selling a tattoo ink, your customers are going to be tattoo makers, who we call tattoo artists. And tattoo artists are usually very young people. Have you seen a 75-year-old tattoo artist? Maybe there are. I'm not saying that. In any case, you should become available to the tattoo artist in the places that they hang out. And you should become available to the tattoo donors who are people who want to tattoo, but typically youngsters, teenagers, maybe even up to their maybe 40s. But you need those guys. So you cannot be going after the wrong target market. So you need to make sure that the segment that you're addressing is available. And then you need to use the words. You need to use the medium. If they're video freaks, they need to make sure that you need to make short-term videos, reels, and so on. So this matching of the buyer's message to the seller's message, the mode in which the message is delivered, the sequence in which it is delivered, all of this is something that you should be working. This is the reason we used to have one person who writes copy, one person who is a video expert, one person who is a visualizer, one person who is an audio expert, one person who is a storyboard guy, one person who puts it all together, and then someone who hires somebody else and does the shooting, puts it together, edits it, radio artist, radio editing, audio editing, or what we call radio engineering, all of that together, background music, blah, blah, intro, outro. This whole complex thing needed a team. Now it does not need a team. Now it needs one. How do you do that? What makes this possible is what we call Gen AI. The number of different tools and techniques that generative AI has made today is one place where you just give a prompt and it will start telling you what the story should be, what kind of an avatar your target is, what kind of keywords he would need, what kind of NLP gestures or techniques or hashtags you should use, what kind of meta tag should be used, what kind of images should be used, what kind of hooks and body and call to action should be. Everything is done by generative AI through a chat GPT or something else. And that is the essence of what we're doing. If you can crack that, it means that you have a clear path ahead of everybody. And this is really what I want to teach. By having a single line definition of what you want and going from there to a full-fledged multi-piece content output is what is possible. So let's look at it this way. For example, if you ask me, the broad steps to this would be as follows. Number one is the first and foremost, you need to be able to do a one-line premise definition of what you're doing. For example, if you ask me, I will say my one-line definition of my business is like this. I work with knowledge workers, corporate professionals, startup founders who want to convert their existing knowledge base / skill sets into digital assets that can be monetized through AI. You ask me in the middle of the night, I'll tell you this. This is really what it is. Every founder or everyone who wants to become a founder needs to be able to define that one line of your business. For example, if you go to Anand Sweets, I think you ask them, they'll say, our job is to generate joy through sweets and savories. Because not only sweets, they also make the namkeens and others. So, joy through sweets and savories. Tata Motors would say the most economical, efficient, valuable vehicle to carry the family. Something. I mean, I'm just saying, you need to be able to reduce your business to a single line, which would be sustainable. Of course, tomorrow you might, Tata Motors could add trucks or aircraft or something else, and they might change it. They might add something else. But fundamentally, that business, one-line business is one-line business. You need to be able to stick with it. All right? So that definition is most important. And from there, you should go to what I call a 300-word essay. You need to be able to write a 300-word essay on this, which has three parts. Maybe you can say a third, second, two-thirds, and the last one-third. The first one-third of it should say why you're doing this and who you're targeting. Second one-third of it should say what is the customer's problem and what are you solving. The third thing should be about what is your method, how are you doing it. underlying this should be a very deep philosophy of a deep conviction about the why, what we call the why. Now, the why is really the reason that you're doing this. And it should be very, very deep and personal. Do not ever copy the why from somebody else, not even from someone you admire or appreciate, because the why is a very personal thing. It's your own story. Okay, guys. So you have to keep the why with you, and you have to write the who, what, how in a 300-word essay. That 300-word essay, you should go sit in front of the camera and make a 5-minute video. Like I've been speaking here last 45 minutes. You have to talk about that one line for 5 minutes in front of the camera and record it and put it up on YouTube. It should have, don't try to go for perfection. Just functionally make it happen. Then we'll worry about perfection later. I'm just giving the outline of the entire frame. Got it? So that 5-minute video has to be there. Then there are tools, there are software tools, which will break that into, let's say, 5 1-minute clips that you don't need to do. It'll do it by itself. So now you have one piece of content, which is a 5-minute video. And then from there, you've gone to 5, let's say, shorts or reels, which are, pieces of the component of the same thing. And then you need to create a feedback loop so that after that, each piece it goes back to the main piece. So let's look at it again. First of all, you need to create a one line, and from there you write a 300-word essay. From the 300-word essay, which is step 2, then you go to a 5-minute video of the same thing. At the 5-minute video, at the end of it, you will have to create a link and tell them, to find out how this is done, please attend my webinar or my workshop, which is like this. I'm just talking now, I'm not showing slides, I'm not showing how it is done, but I'm just saying that is the way to do it. You should lead to a webinar, which is, let's say, some date in the future, maybe 2 days later, 3 days later. That webinar will be a 1-hour webinar where you'll actually show how it is done. And then in the short videos, you'll have to say, for the full video, go to this particular video link. So do you see the loop? I want to now go to the webinar. There's a link there that goes to the webinar. At the webinar, you'll give them the full story and say, look, this is how it is, this is how I work, and let me know if you're interested. Please sign up. There's the sign up link. Then they become part of your team, and then you start working with them, and this is how you close the loop. If you're charging a fee, then that fee is what we call monetization of your assets. These 5 videos will further split. Now, 5-minute video is extempore and pouring your heart out. It has a lot more gems and nuggets that were not there in the original 300-word piece. Now, what you should do there is go to YouTube and pick up a script, the script of that entire video, feed it into ChatGPT, and there's a prompt that you should use, and I'll give it to you. And ask ChatGPT to create an excellent LinkedIn post from that script. So you have your LinkedIn post ready. Then you can use that script, copy it, paste it into a Buzzsprout or something, and create an avatar or put your own photograph there, speak into it or read into it, or create an AI voice to read that whole thing effectively. Then now you have a podcast. So let's go back and look at it again. From that one line, we created a 5-minute video. Sorry, we created a 300-word essay. We created a 5-minute video. We created 5 mini videos, created one webinar, which is an actual webinar, and then you created a LinkedIn post, and you also created a podcast. In other words, you did 6 different things out of one. Now, I'm saying that this has to be done every week. If you do this every week, we're talking about 6 into 4, 7 into 4 is 28 pieces of content in a month, in 4 weeks. If you're doing 2 webinars a week and 2 videos a week, this will double to 56 pieces of content per month. If you do this for 6 months, we're talking about 300 pieces of content around the same topic. If you do it for the year, we're talking about 600 to 700 pieces of content, same topic. If that topic is well received, if it's in demand, if it's required, for example, you cannot suddenly today come and say, How do you create black and white photographs manually in a lab? But if you say something like, how do you create an AI-based career sitting at home and earning 5 lakhs a month? Will probably be flooded. So this is really what you should be doing. This is really what I meant by saying how to move from one line or one piece of content to 10 pieces of content. And if you do it for a year on a specific topic, which is very niche, you're not repetitive. And there's a way to do that. How do you spin in the story in multiple ways? If you do this correctly, I will tell you in 3 or 4 years, you will have a large enough following and your brand will be established as this person equals this topic. See, in this knowledge world, forget about influencers and all. That's okay. But if you're looking to create a presence, you need to create an association between you, your identity, and one element of your knowledge, some skill. For example, Uncle Wariku is better known for working with youngsters in getting their life involved. Epic shit, right? And similarly, you have different people doing different things, but you need to create that strong association. If you create a strong association, then nothing can stop you. Okay. Now I'm going to stop here, and I just want to leave you guys with the following. I have a webinar coming up on Wednesday, 14th, but I'll be running you guys through a completely new program I have about how digital assets can be created out of your knowledge and how you should actually look forward to do this. I think everyone should do this. Because in this era, it's never been an easier time to do this. Okay, so go for it. Come back. You'll get all the details in the same place. Pick up my link, register for the webinar. Come back, and we will do a lot of magic. And I'll be holding these kinds of events every week. Call me and make sure that you register and become a part of this community. All the best. And I look forward to seeing you again down the road. Take care.